Somebody's got to say nice and quiet, please.
Yes, nice and quiet, please.
Silence on set.
Right. So here we are in Reading. My name is Jessica Lee Morgan, and I am utterly delighted to be joined by my teacher, Ron Colyer. Welcome, Ron.
Hi.
Born and bred in Reading?
Yes, but not anymore.
Not anymore. So Ron and I met when I phoned you from Hungerford, wondering what on earth to do next with my life, and said I would quite like to join your training course, simply because it was the nearest one to me. And you invited me to come and see you because it was the summer break. I came to see you. You said, have a think about it. And I said, I don't need to, I'm doing it. And that was it. And that was 2018. So, Ron, you ran a training course there since how long? Since when?
Well, the person who started the training course was called Ray Evans, who very much figures as one of my mentors, really. And I'd met him a little bit at Lansdowne Road Carrington training course where I trained, and then subsequently when Dick and Elizabeth Walker, who were my first teachers actually, started their training course quite late in their lives, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Ray was one of their people who came and helped and assisted, and I was asked to do that as well occasionally, and then I think it became once a week. And so I would bump into Ray, and he was thinking of starting his own training course over in Aylesbury, and he wanted me to be his assistant.
Marvellous.
So that's how that started. And then when Ray died, I took over. Well, I'd already, he'd been pressuring me for some time to get head of training status.
Right.
And I didn't want to do it until I'd been teaching for 10 years. I didn't think that was right to do it any sooner. And so that the 10 years elapsed. And so we coaxed and boxed for some time,
right.
And then when he died, obviously, I took over.
You took over?
Yeah.
And then you were joined by Frankie Stringer?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that there was another connection, because when I started training at Lansdowne Road with Walter and Dilys Carrington, the person who was hanging up her coat at the same time on day one was Carolyn Nichols,
yes.
Lynn Nichols, who ultimately started her training course with John Nichols. And Frankie had trained with John and Lynn at this point, so yeah. So she became my main assistant.
Oh, wonderful. I feel absolutely blessed to have trained with both of you.
Well, Frank is such a lovely teacher, and it's great that we still, even though that training course shut, suffered from the pandemic as others did, and other things, state of the world. So, but we still do, Frankie and I still do postgraduate workshops a couple of times a year.
Certainly do.
That's great to see everybody that we know coming back for more.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So, so we're connected a bit by music, very different kinds of music, but you found the techniques through music, didn't you?
Well, yes. So when I was at school in Reading School, in fact, in my last couple of years, I was sufficiently, well on with my violin playing to be asked to do local gigs a bit, choral society stuff and all that kind of thing. And there was a guy who taught violin, and his name was Roy Lang. And I would sometimes find myself sitting next to Roy on these gigs. So, of course, I was young and inexperienced, and he was the opposite. And one day, Roy said to me, "Do you know, Ron, if you go on thrusting your head at the music like that, you're going to be in trouble.
Oh dear.
And what you've got to do is you've got to find out about somebody called, he was a Scot, F. Matthias Alexander."
Ah.
And he always used to refer to him very formally like this. As far as I've been able to work out, I'm not sure he'd ever had a lesson, but he'd read all Alexander's books.
Oh wow.
And he'd obviously understood something from them. So he was always on at me about F. Matthias Alexander, and I distinctly remember one Saturday morning, because we went to school on Saturday morning, coming through Reading, seeing Roy coming the opposite direction and crossing the road because I didn't want yet another lecture about F. Matthias Alexander. So then I got into Manchester University to read music, and did violin at what was then the Royal Manchester College of Music, I think it was called, but there were two institutions, and now they're combined, and it's the Royal Northern School.
Yeah.
So I did that, and when I came out at the other end, I knew perfectly well that I was kind of like against a brick wall, because there was so much tension in what I was doing. And I've got pictures of me playing, which I'd rather not look at.
Oh dear.
I more or less rang up Roy, and I was sort of back in this area, and said, I give in.
What's his number?
So Roy said, well, what you've got to do is you've got to ring this number, London number, yeah. And so I rang the number, and I was given an appointment, and that I had to go to 16 Ashley Place.
Mythical. My hair's gone and kind of...
Which, of course, was where Alexander taught for many years.
Amazing.
But he wasn't alive anymore.
Yeah.
So I went to the famous Ashley Place, which no longer exists. And I was shown into some sort of waiting room, and I was told that Mr. MacDonald would see me shortly.
Wow.
So I had about, I think, 6 lessons with Patrick MacDonald, which were mind-blowing and body-blowing and whatever you like to say, absolutely extraordinary. But the infuriating thing is that I can't remember much about the lessons themselves.
Wow.
Except that I do remember him showing me the famous photograph of the athlete whose name was Sandow. And there was some kind of thing where Sandow was running a very important race, and he had to be helped across the finishing line, which caused a certain amount of furore and all the rest of it. And there's a famous picture of him, and of course he's this doing this, and I can remember Patrick showing me this picture and showing me how this guy was pulling his head back and thrusting his chest forward, and what that had done to his back, and saying that if he hadn't been doing that, he might have got on a bit better. But I can't remember any more detail than that, except that I was taught the verbal directions, as in the classic form. We know them. I remember that I came out sort of floating on air and all that. And I think on the first lesson I might have managed to get to the first traffic light on the way back to Victoria Station before I realised that that lovely feeling had rather evaporated. And I kind of measured my progress over those 6 lessons, because I'd get a couple, another block further.
Right.
So on. What happened next was that I was offered a job teaching music and violin in Warwick. And so I went up there, and in those days there were practically no Alexander teachers outside of London. And I couldn't afford to go up and down from London and all of that. I was renting a flat and all of this. But I'm guessing I spent those couple of years trying to do what I thought Mr. MacDonald had shown me.
Yeah.
And very much getting in my own way. But during that time, it was very difficult to access Alexander's books because the copyright was being sat on. And eventually, while I was in Warwick, was published Wilfred Barlow's book on the technique. So I got hold of that, and I was avidly reading it and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I was practicing, and I had managed somehow to change what I was doing with the instrument. So I was using less tension and more economy of effort into what I was doing. And then, as had been my objective, I started doing auditions. So I auditioned for the Philharmonia Orchestra, and I got in. I think I've jumped ahead a little bit. I came back down to, no, that hadn't happened yet. I came back down to Reading, where I'd had another job temporarily. And that's when I discovered that Dick and Elizabeth Walker, who of course were trained by FM himself, were living just outside Oxford. So I went for my first lesson with Dick. And we talked a little bit. And I think I was a bit embarrassed somehow that I had these lessons with MacDonald and not continued, although there were good reasons why that happened. And I sort of didn't confess.
Well, you made out that you've been having lessons all along.
No. As far as Dick was concerned to begin with, I'd not had any.
Oh, I see, right.
And so we talked a bit, and I talked about, my playing and what my ideas were to do some auditions. And Dick said, well, let's do some work. Let me show you what it's, something about what we do. So we started, and with me in the chair or in front of it. And after a little while, Dick said, have you had lessons before?
Rumbled.
So I was rumbled, and I thought, my God, how does he know that?
Oh, wow.
Um,
Are they psychic?
yes, is he psychic?
It's a common thing.
So then I confessed, and but Dick was very amused,
Yeah.
and we carried on. Sometimes he would, if I'd been, in London all day or something, Dick would conclude that I was really a bit tired, and he would go and get Elizabeth, and they would set about me, the two of them.
Oh my goodness.
Which was absolutely remarkable, because it can be very confusing to have two people working on you, but they were such a team that they understood each other so well, and that it wasn't at all confusing.
Yeah. So were they? Sorry to interrupt. Were they contemporaries? We think of them as the first generation. Were they contemporaries of Patrick during the training?
Yes.
They're all in the same course.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. You can read Marjorie Barlow's accounts of course, all of that.
Yeah.
So no. And so during that time, I auditioned for the Philharmonia Orchestra, and I got in. And I wouldn't have got in if it hadn't been for the Alexander work. I'm absolutely sure about that.
Yeah.
And then from the Philharmonia, I moved to the BBC Symphony Orchestra and spent some happy years with that, doing interesting tours, like going to Japan, all of that. And more felt that I wanted to do the training and pass on what I'd learnt and what I'd benefited from. And so I went to see Dick and Elizabeth's recommendation. I went to see Walter and Dilys, and I got interviewed, and in those days there was a waiting list.
Good Lord.
Even.
Oh, wonderful.
And so I got onto the waiting list, and then in must have been 1979, I turned up there for day one.
Oh, alongside Carolyn.
And there was Carolyn, and and afterwards so during the time I was training, I was lucky to get sort of freelance work and recording sessions and so on, which kept me going through the training and helped pay for it and all of that. And so since then I got interested in teaching the violin, particularly influenced by the Japanese Suzuki method. I met Dr. Suzuki in Japan.
Wow.
And that's always influenced my violin teaching, which I still love to do.
How wonderful.
And so I've been, doing the two things ever since, and still playing. And,
wonderful. How amazing.